When King Budimir died in 711, he was succeeded by his son Svetolik. After Svetolik, his son Vladislav 724-727 came to the throne and was succeeded by his young brother Tomislav 727 to unknown. There are no data of important events during the reign of these kings, so we can assume that this time was a time of peace. During the reign of Tomislav's son Sebislav 744-760, the borders of Serbia in the north and northeast have been expanded. One data from 756 tells us that the Pannonian province of Savia, today Slavonia, was part of Serbia at that time, and that Serbia bordered on the north with Avars and on the east with Bulgarians. At that time, the Bulgarians were on the lower Danube on the left bank of this river. Byzantium was ruled at that time by Emperor Constantine Copronymus, who was on a famous iconoclast on the council of 754, created a huge mess in the church. The consequences of that religious disorder were also felt in Serbia, since church was then under the administration of Patriarch of Constantinople. In the west, in 756, the Roman Archbishop proclaimed himself the ruler of the earth, to whom King Pepin of Fruška gave parts of Italy for administration. In both the east and the west, the Christian Church is increasingly separated from its real purpose and used for purely political purposes. The Archbishop of Rome, under the nickname Pope, strives to be the new Roman Emperor, and in Byzantium the Church was reduced to ordinary toll of Constantinople court. Both were equally hostile to Serbs. King Sebislav in 760 year divided Serbia into two administrative parts and gave each of his sons one half of the state for administration. The eldest son, Razbin, who ruled from 760 to 768, was given control of the southern parts of Serbia from Istria to Macedonia. His younger brother Vladimir was given control of the northern parts of Serbia, Slavonia, Vlahia, Raška and Bosna. Vladimir ruled from 760 to 781, and after the death of his brother Razbin, he united northern and southern Serbia. King Vladimir was succeeded by his son Karamir, 781 to 789. During his rule, conflicts between Fruška and Serbia began. King Šarmiljan of Fruška tried to win over the border nobles in Serbia by offering them very great privileges if they separate from their ruler and become his vassals. In addition to these tempting offers, Šarmiljan also brought large military forces to Serbian border. 3 Serbian western banats were threatened by Frug: Istria, Japodia, and the banat of Lika and Krbava. King Karamir came with his army to these western banats. Some battles were fought in a border area of Serbia, but we do not have more detailed data on those battles. It is only known that King Karamir were wounded and that he died as a result of those wounds in 789. Šarmiljan failed to conquer any of the Serbian border banats. Karamir's son Tvrdoslav, 789 to 794, became the new king of Serbia, which he carried out reorganization of the state administration and judiciary of the western Serbian banats, gave the people great privileges, and thus consolidated its powers in those areas. Šarmiljan, starting from 791, waged a great war against the Avars of Pannonia, so his military forces were occupied in that war. The Fruška force again aimed at Serbia in 794, when it managed to conquer Istria from the Serbs. King Tvrdoslav waged a great war with the Frujans, prevented their further penetration into Serbia, but he failed to regain Istria. He was prevented from doing so by his sudden death when he was in Lika with an army. Since Tvrdoslav had no heir, the power was taken over by Duke Ostrivoj, who was related to the royal house. Voivoda Ostrivoj remained with the army in western Serbian areas for 2 years until Fruzan danger was completely eliminated. Then he came to Škodra and installed his son Tolimir on the throne of Serbia. Ostrivoyevich dynasty, first period, 794 to 865. Voivoda Ostrivoy, 794 to 796. The founder of the new dynasty was Duke or Voivoda Ostrivoy, nephew of King Tvrdoslav. Ostrivoy spent 2 years at the head of an army in western Serbian Banat, repelling attacks by Frisian forces. The great kingdom of Fruška under Šalmanjan was at the height of its power at that time. Fruška posed a constant danger in western borders of Serbia and tried to break through to Dalmatia several times. The long stay of Duke Ostrivoy, and the then real ruler of Serbia, at the head of the army in western Banat, clearly tells us that during all that time there was a state of war between Phrygia and Serbia. Only after the danger was completely eliminated, the Duke came to Shkodra and crowned his son Tolimir as king of Serbia. King Tolimir, 796 to 812. King Tolimir Ostrivoyevich remained famous in history for his charity, justice, and piety. The new king could temporarily dedicate himself to internal situation in Serbia. Šalmanjan fought again with Avars, defeated them, occupied their camp, the so-called Ring, which was the Avarian mobile capital in the plains of western Pannonia. After the victory of the Avars in 796, Fruzga expanded to a part of Pannonia. Numerous Serbs lived all over Pannonia at that time, so a part of Pannonian Serbs fell under the rule of Fruška. The Serbian prefect of western Slavonia, Vojnimir, based in Sisak, accepted the Fruška alliance and fought with them against the Avars. After the victory, Vojnimir also had to agree to a vassalship with Šarmanjan. This case tells us that the Frisians did not respect the agreements with allies, but imposed their will after the victory. The Fruška state was distinguished by its devotion to the Roman Catholic Church and its intolerance of other churches. In 799, the Frisians tried to forcibly baptize Avars, so that violence caused of a great Avar revolt. The Frisian army quelled the rebellion and forced a part of Avars to be baptized. The same year, the army of Frisians, led by Macro Count Erich, attacked Serbia from the direction of Istra. Erich did not get far, but was defeated and killed in battle near Trsat. The following year, the Frisians renewed their attack with large forces and occupied western parts of Serbia all the way to Liburnia, to the Zrmanja river. The Pannonian Serbs had previously been under Avars, freed from their barbaric hordes, which now persecuted the remnants of that people from their country. Therefore, in 805, they were forced to ask Šalmanjan to give them some land to settle. Šalmanjan gave them to settle along the eastern border of his empire in the areas of Upper Posavina and north to today's Slovakia. In that area, Carlo arranged a new administrative unit, the Avar Mark. It was obvious that Šalmanjan wanted to use Avars as living wall against Serbs with this new brand. The Avar power was destroyed, their hordes scattered, and they no longer represent a significant force. Only the Avar population remained, divided into several countries in form of a broken chain from the southern Poland through Krakow and through Czech Republic and Slovakia to western Slovenia and Dalmatia, where the Avar settlements were located in the area of Liburnia. Since Carantania was also one of Serbian lands in which the Avars settled, it can be concluded that the remnants of Avars settled exclusively in Serbian lands. But since that time, the Avars are no longer mentioned under the former name, but under the name Croats, Hrvati. This change of name, simultaneous everywhere where the Avars were, cannot be explained otherwise than the fact that the Avars called themselves in their language by the name that was similar to the first mentions of Croatian name, such as Horovati, Horvati, Hrovati, or Harvarati. The name Avar, in its original form, comes from Greek writers, and we are well aware that Greek writers almost never correctly spells foreign names. We have seen that Serbs did not call Avars by that name, but Obri. When we have seen that example of the Serbian name, how Greek writers in all possible ways copied it. As Serbs were a people with whom Greeks lived together for centuries, what can be expected about their accuracy in writing of the names of other people? In one of the above examples of the first Croatian names, there is a very clear name of Avari, Havarati. When the Prussian Empire was at the peak of its power, its influence was very strong in Dalmatia, so in 806 the bishops of Zadar, Trogir, Split and Dubrovnik asked Charlemagne to take their cities under his protection. Until then these cities were under protection of Byzantium. Charlemagne gladly accepted them under his protection, but it will not be for a long time, because soon after Byzantium, which was the strongest naval power in Mediterranean, defeated Prussian naval forces, so those cities changed their protector again. There was an attack on Serbia in 812 in the area of eastern Slavonia and Srem. King Tolimir defeated the attackers and expelled them from these parts. However, it remained unclear who the attackers were. Some historians mentioned them as Hungarians, but they could not be Hungarians because the Hungarians had not yet reached Pannonia.